So, all right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our final Lunch and Learn of the season. I'm excited to have all of you here. My name is Allison Marchioni. I'm the programs director at the Upper Valley Land Trust. So thank you for attending. And today we have a really interesting presentation for you. But before we get started, I want to let everyone know that this presentation is being recorded and it will be available after the presentation on our YouTube channel. So today I'm excited to welcome you to Using iNaturalist to Rediscover Lost Species. Today we have Julia Pupko, the Community Science Outreach Naturalist at the Vermont Center for Ecostudies. Julia is the Community Science Outreach Naturalist, serving at the Vermont Center for Ecostudies through EcoAmericorps. Julia fell in love with the natural world at a very young age, learning about plant medicine from her mother and spending hours exploring the forest around her family's house with her father. Her childhood connection to the outdoors inspired her to pursue a degree in environmental sciences with a focus on wildlife biology at the University of Vermont, where she graduated with honors in 2019. Julia has conducted research for a senior thesis project on soil greenhouse gas emissions, interned for an environmental consulting firm, and worked as a forest health technician at the Dorset Ecosystem Monitoring Cooperative prior to the start of her service term. Julia's interests are currently focused on community-based conservation initiatives, discerning the intersectionality between culture and the environment, and how this intersectionality can inform management practices that best provide for local communities and ecological systems at once. Julia currently lives in Vermont, spending her spare time birding, painting, climbing, and working on starting a community reforestation project with a friend. Welcome, Julia. Just a couple other housekeeping things before I turn it over to Julia. I want to ask everyone to just stay on mute for the presentation so we don't have any disruptive noise or feedback. If you have questions, which I really hope that you will, put them into the chat box, and when the presentation's over, I'll go through the questions and ask them to Julia. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julia and let's get started.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Allison. So before I begin, I would just like to acknowledge that the Vermont Center for Ecostudies is located in southern Vermont, which is Abenaki land. In terms of how I'm kind of going to proceed with this presentation, I wanted to make it a little bit more tangible than just kind of talking about all of these ways that you can use iNaturalist. So I will be presenting iNaturalist through the lens of its relevance to conservation, using the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas as a focus. Like Allison said, definitely pop questions into the chat as we go. I am going to be opening up iNaturalist and kind of showing you a couple of the features that I really enjoy with it, as well as how to do some very basic things in iNaturalist. So I'll probably pause while I'm in the web version of it. So if people have questions that are relevant to what I'm doing, I can just answer them while I'm still in iNaturalist. Alrighty. So to begin, what is iNaturalist? iNaturalist is an entirely free platform that connects people with science and provides crowdsourced species identification. So this is a really, really great platform for connecting naturalists to the nature surrounding them or to ecosystems that are maybe new to them if you move or travel, etc., as well as bringing naturalists from across the world together to learn, help each other learn, and contribute to research on the natural world. iNaturalist has both a computer, a web browser interface, and also has mobile apps for both iPhones and non-iPhones. Like any smartphone, you can download the app. The basic, the mobile app version kind of has a more basic version of iNaturalist, whereas the web interface has a lot more features and, in my opinion, makes it much easier to edit and adjust your observations to your needs. I will get into what observations are momentarily. So I would really encourage checking out the web version, even if you think that you would primarily be using the mobile version, because it is a lot easier to just take photos on your phone and upload as you go while you are outside. So one thing that I kind of wanted to note here is iNaturalist essentially allows you to upload interactions that you are having with the natural world. And these interactions are based in the unit of an observation, which basically is one interaction that you have with one organism at one time. So if you take a photo of a bee on a flower, what you would want to do is upload that photo, but then you would want to duplicate it. So you have one observation where you are identifying the bee and one observation where you are identifying the flower. Once you have uploaded these observations, you will have both help from the artificial intelligence in iNaturalist with identifying what those organisms are. And then once your upload is complete, other iNaturalist users will come in and confirm your identification, or will suggest a new identification if you either weren't sure what the species was or incorrectly identified it. Once enough people have confirmed your identification or have confirmed a new identification, your observation will go from having a little tag that says needs ID to being research grade. And basically what this means is that there is that layer of data validity to your observation because other users have confirmed it. And from there, that observation will get pulled into other databases, such as GBIF, where researchers and community naturalists alike can very easily go and download the data or download it from iNaturalist itself, therefore using your observations in science, which is really cool. So that brings me to the point, since I'm using the terms community naturalists and community science a bit, what is community science and why is iNaturalist useful for community science? So community science is research or science led by communities to meet their needs. And iNaturalist provides a very easy and again, free platform for both conservation organizations to involve the public in their research, and also for community members who may be interested in, say, surveying their town for conservation board meetings, or if there is development that is planned by their town and they are afraid that some species may be negatively impacted. iNaturalist is a really great way to bring a bunch of different people together and all be uploading these interactions that they're having with wildlife to one place, so you can very easily create a survey for your region of interest. With this, you can pull in iNaturalist users from across the world, and you can also engage with organizations such as the Vermont Atlas of Life team, which is a subgroup within the Vermont Center for Ecostudies. We use iNaturalist a lot to engage community members in our science, but it can also go the other way, where you come across us on iNaturalist and let us know about something that you are trying to start, and then we can provide you with assistance so you can better survey your area. And one of the projects that we are using iNaturalist for right now is the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas, trying to get a complete survey of lady beetles across the state of Vermont. Now, I know some of you are zooming in from New Hampshire and maybe from other places as well. And I would like to point out that since you can start your own projects on iNaturalist, you can do similar projects or, your own sort of project using the same platforms and still be contributing very valuable observations to science and also learning along the way, which is great. So this brings us to why community science is so useful, both for community members and for research organizations. So this graphic shows lady beetle records over time in the state of Vermont. And here, this is the number of records. You can see the year here. And overall, aside from, there was a survey of lady beetles completed in 1976. So aside from the spike there, most years have below 100 records of lady beetles in the state. And you can see that there's this beginning of an exponential increase when the Vermont Atlas of Life project on iNaturalist started. And then when we started the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas, which is another project on iNaturalist, and don't worry, I will talk about what projects are as I progress with this presentation. You can see that between 2019, when we started the project and started talking about it, and 2020, when we actually did our pilot year of the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas, this huge increase in observations of lady beetles that we now have. So as you can see, one of the benefits of engaging with community science from the context of a research organization is it increases the chances of finding the species that we are looking for. And it also increases just the number of records that we have of these species. In terms of community benefits for involving yourself in science projects or starting your own science projects on iNaturalist, you become more engaged with research, and also you become more aware of different conservation issues and different species that you may not have known about before. I know I personally seem to come across new species of invertebrate every single time I'm on iNaturalist that I just had no idea even existed. So it is just a very powerful tool for learning more. So this is going to be kind of my beginning introduction to iNaturalist and to its basic units. So I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to go to my next slide and talk about some of the features in iNaturalist before actually pulling up iNaturalist and then really talking through everything. I feel like it makes a little bit more sense once you're in the platform to see what I'm talking about instead of just having this kind of intangible description from a PowerPoint slide. So basically, the general unit of iNaturalist is called an observation, like I've said before. And again, that observation is an interaction that you have with one organism at one location and one time. So this also means, say you have a tree in your backyard and you want to take photos of it and upload those to iNaturalist in the winter. And then you also want to take photos of that same tree when the buds are first breaking open in the spring. Those would be two separate interactions, or two separate observations, excuse me, because even though it's the same organism at the same location, you are taking the photos at different times, making it a new observation. So basically, in order to get your observations to research grade, which means there's the largest potential for them to be useful not only for your own personal learning, but also to conservation, if that is something of interest to you, you really need to make sure that you have correct date, location, and preferably also time. It's okay if you know like what date or a general, you know that you took this photo in the month of August, like that's still fine and we can still work with that. But having the most specific date and location information possible is the most useful for iNaturalist. And I will talk about how you can edit your photos for observations once I jump into iNaturalist. I'm just going to briefly talk about a couple of the other features in iNaturalist, and then I will go and show it all. So basically in iNaturalist, you have a bunch of options up top. You can see this will be the top search bar and then top banner along the top of iNaturalist. You have an Explore tab where you can interactively look for organisms either in a region or across the world. This allows you to very easily explore species maps and different species found in your location if that is of interest. You also have a very easy way to view your contributions to iNaturalist, some options including projects under the community dropdown. You have an identify tab where you can go and help others correctly identify species, and then some other options. So at this point, I'm going to hop into iNaturalist. Let me do that and do a new share. Okay. There we go. So when you first start with iNaturalist, you will be taken to a page very similar to this. It just won't have your login information populated, and you would just click don't have an account, sign up, and you just have to enter some very quick information. So what you want your username to be, your email, and maybe a couple other things. All of it takes under 5 minutes. So it's very convenient. And then you have your iNaturalist account created. And once you are in, you can see iNaturalist automatically pulls up my personal dashboard, which has information. Let me zoom in a little bit here. There we go. Which has information on the users that I am following in my feed. So I can go through that. And then it also has any of my personal observations that other people have helped to identify will be in this all updates feed as well. You also have a few other options here that you can click through, including a tab that specifically shows your content. So you can see right here is an observation that I made, and this user added an identification, meaning that it is now research grade. And you can also see on the right-hand side here, there's this iNaturalist forum option. I'm not going to go over that in super detail today because I feel like that will just be a little bit overwhelming considering how many other iNaturalist things I'll be talking about. That said, at the end, I can pop into the chat this video series that I've been doing for basically the entirety of my service term, where each week I talk about a different iNaturalist topic and really go into depth on how to use it, one of which is the forum. But essentially, the iNaturalist forum allows you to search through different questions that you may have and also report any bugs in iNaturalist that are just making it not work particularly well, or feature requests or anything else like that. So up at the top of iNaturalist here, you see you have your search bar, and then next to it, you have the Explore tab. When you are in Explore, iNaturalist will think. And you can see here, Vermont is selected. So I'm only getting shown the observations in the state of Vermont. But if I were to exit out of Vermont, I just have a presetting in iNaturalist where it automatically pulls up Vermont when I go to my Explore tab. I would get a map like this across the whole world. When you zoom in a little bit more here, you can see that those red squares covering the state of Vermont are actually all of these really small teardrops. And if you're to click on one of these, sorry, iNaturalist is being really slow right now. Well, usually when it's loading a little bit better, it will pull up information for, there we go, for the identification or for the observation that's represented by that teardrop. And all of these different colors represent different larger taxonomic groups. So the green ones are plants. You can see here, this blue one is rodents, and it kind of is, and that also for the rest of mammals as well, and kind of goes like that. So if you are interested in searching for a specific taxonomic group or a species, what you can do is simply type that into the search bar here. So I can do lady beetles, for example, and a drop-down function will pop up so you can select the correct taxonomic group that you want. I already have the location of Vermont added, so I'm not going to change that, but you can also click filters here to add more information. For example, I can filter by observation type, so I can select research grade and only now have the confirmed observations pop up. I could add a specific iNaturalist user if I wanted. If I hadn't already selected lady beetles, I could click one of these categories here. So you see there's birds, amphibians, etc. There's also unknown. You can select different ranks here. So you could look for observations that are that have been uploaded and identified between kingdom and say order for the low rank, and then it won't pull up observations that have been identified all the way down to species, but just those that have higher identifications because the user was not sure as to what the exact species was. You can further filter by date or a specific month if you want, or have an additional feature here for an exact date that the observation was uploaded, even if the interaction did not occur on that date. And another cool thing here is once you've filtered to your desire and clicked update search, you can go back into filters and then download the information that you have curated in iNaturalist to a CSV if you want to view it and potentially analyze that data further. So another thing that I want to note is either by searching for a taxonomic group or species up top, or by finding a species of interest in your Explore page, what you can do is going from the Explore page, you'd click on the observation of interest. If I just wanted to search for twice-stabbed lady beetles, I'd type that in the top. But you can see here, since I clicked on an observation, I'm taken to a page that has all of the information about this observation. So we have the photo that the user took. If the user took more photos of this organism, you could scroll through those. You can see here that you have a map showing where this observation occurred. Also, one important thing to note with the map is that if you are, say, observing an organism that is at your house and you do not want the exact location of your house to appear on iNaturalist, you are able to obscure your location to add that layer of privacy for yourself. On the observation page, you can also see who uploaded and what the initial identification suggestion was. You can also see that another user has agreed with this. You have more information over here called annotations, which allows you, any user can add these. So this lady beetle, for example, is an adult, so I can add life stage as adult. But since I don't know the sex, and honestly, sometimes lady beetles will die and continue to hang on to whatever they died on, I can't positively say that this was alive or what the sex is, so I'm not going to add either of those. You can also add observation fields down here, such as associated observations or associated species or anything relating to the behavior of the organism. All of this information just increases the both ability of other users to help you with identification based on where you saw the species and what the species was doing. It also provides more information for users like yourself that may wish to further study a certain taxonomic group or species, or for researchers because you have more information about what was going on using both observation fields and annotations. iNaturalist also has specific taxonomic pages for both larger taxonomic groups such as lady beetles and also for species, all of which are curated by the organisms that have been uploaded to iNaturalist. And you can see now I'm in the twice-stabbed lady beetle species page. You have the ability to filter by place. Right now, the map here is showing me the entire United States. And I have some charts over here that are curated based on all twice-stabbed lady beetle observations across its range. However, if I wanted to filter in a little bit more, for example, looking at Vermont, you can see now that the map has zoomed in. It's including a little bit around the state of Vermont, but has zoomed into the general geographic area that I had filtered by. And also these charts here have now changed to reflect what the observations of twice-stabbed lady beetles look like in the state of Vermont. So this is a really nice feature that just allows you to understand where and how an organism of interest has been seen. Additionally, each taxonomic page or species page has an about, which links to Wikipedia. Some of these pages are super comprehensive and provide a lot of information. Others don't even exist. It just depends on what's in Wikipedia. However, you have these really nice more information tabs on the side, which allow you to very quickly learn more about a species or taxonomic group of interest.
Naturalist.
Freedom.
Also, there you go. Okay. Additionally, you have a taxonomy page, which shows you the taxonomic tree of the, again, species or taxonomic group of interest. You have a status page showing the conservation status of the species of interest. And my favorite tab, you have similar species. So right now, since I filtered twice-stabbed lady beetles to the state of Vermont, I am only getting information on other species that twice-stabbed lady beetles have been misidentified as in the state of Vermont. But if I were to exit out of Vermont up top here, I now am getting photos of all of the species that twice-stabbed lady beetles have been misidentified as, or conversely, that they have been misidentified as twice-stabbed lady beetles across the entire range of this species. And I find this similar species tab to be really helpful because it allows you to kind of start to see what other species look like the either species or taxonomic group that you are looking at, so you can start to learn how to better identify them. So another thing that I wanted to highlight very briefly in iNaturalist is the Identify tab. This is where you go if you want to help other users identify their observations. And you can see that the options up top here are the same as that of the Explore page, which is really nice. So what you can do is, again, type in a species or taxonomic group of interest, a region of interest, or any of these other filters. And iNaturalist will pull up all of the observations. And then what you can do is click on one of these and look through any of the pictures that exist here. Again, you can see where the observation occurred. And if you agree with the identification of this species, what you can do is click agree. And you can see now my identification has popped up, and this is now considered to be research grade because I've confirmed the identification. Or if you either know for sure that this is a lady beetle, but you're not sure what species it is and you want to add an ID, you can just click this and you could just type in lady beetles. And then iNaturalist would ask you, do you disagree that this species is a lady beetle? Or are you just unsure of the species but know that it is a lady beetle? And you can click on the correct option, or say this is not a painted lady beetle, but instead is a Hudsonian lady beetle. You could type in the correct species here. You could always tell the user why you are identifying it as a different species, and then simply click Save. The Identification tab has a bunch of other information and areas within each observation page. So for example, suggestions shows the 2 species that the artificial intelligence in iNaturalist suggests may be the correct one. You again have this annotations tab where you can add right from the identify page along with observation fields, and you have data quality information. That said, I'm not going to go through these in any great depth, just in the interest of time, but there is a lot to the Identify tab. So again, this is just how you help other users and also how other users will help you with the identification of the organisms that you are uploading. One last thing before I show you all how to actually upload observations to iNaturalist, I just wanted to highlight the Community tab here, and specifically under Community, I wanted to talk a little bit about projects. So this is the way that you can create a page in iNaturalist essentially to curate observations either to a specific geographic location. For example, if you want to survey all of the organisms in your town, or to a specific taxonomic group. So an example is that the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas project has been created to encapsulate all of the observations of lady beetles across the state of Vermont. So that is a specific taxonomic group in a specific region. And basically what this allows you to do is there's a journal feature, so anybody who has joined the project can get updates for bio blitzes that you plan or any information you want to send out. You have interactive statistics up here for the number of observations, species, and people who have contributed. You also can see those who have the most observations, most species, and the most observed species, along with information on the side, allowing you to download the data within this project. And then there's the project curator tools only exist if you have actually created the project. And then the last thing I want to note with projects is there are 3 major types of projects in iNaturalist. There are collection projects, which are the easiest to use, and I would recommend starting with those if starting a project is of interest to you. Basically what that does is runs a search every time the project page in iNaturalist is loaded and collects all of the observations that fit the criteria that you have specified. There are traditional projects such as the Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas, which requires users to upload their observations that are already in iNaturalist to the project later. So traditional projects take a little bit more work than collection projects do, but they allow you to have a little more specificity in terms of what types of observations you are trying to curate. And then there are also collection project or umbrella projects, which take a bunch of different project types, whether they be collection or traditional, and all curate that information together. So that would be a really good project option if you say want to have a competition between a bunch of different towns in your state for a BioBlitz. So before I go over uploading observations, are there any questions that I can answer at this point while I'm still in iNaturalist? You're welcome to just unmute yourself and ask.
I have a quick question, Julia. You said you had to take a note of the date and time that you take the photograph. Doesn't that automatically do that?
So yes, if you are using a smartphone or something like that, it will.
Yeah.
I just like to make a point of that because I know personally, I'm not super adept at adjusting the settings in my camera. So if I take photos on my camera and then upload them to my computer, oftentimes the date and time, and then I don't have location information turned on, so that won't even exist, but the date and time are often wrong from my camera. So that's why I make a note of it.
Okay, I'm going to have to leave. Can I just ask one little question? This is a little bit above my head. I'm not a scientist, but should I feel guilty if I use iNaturalist just for my own selfish reasons?
Definitely not. That is perfectly fine, because basically, regardless of whether you are actively using iNaturalist to try to contribute to conservation, as long as you have your observations themselves set to be a copyright that allows for other people to use with credit to you, you are contributing to science. So it's totally, yes, it's totally fine if you're just using it for your personal learning. That's why it was developed. It just has the added benefit of being able to contribute to conservation.
No, it's great. I'd like to explore it. I have the app Picture This, which costs $30 a year. I just found out, but so this iNaturalist sounds like it might be better.
Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I'll also I can send Allison an email with some information on that VCE has curated on how to use iNaturalist, which she can then send out to those of you who registered, which may be helpful.
Thank you so much. I have another meeting, so I have to go. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, any
comment for you? So I will say, you talked a lot about projects. The Upper Valley Land Trust, all of our conservation areas are in iNaturalist as projects, and that's one of the ways that we crowdsource naturalist data to use for natural resource inventories and management plans. And so I just wanted to put that plug in there for our projects as well. I have a couple questions in the chat. Do you want me to ask them now?
Yeah, that is totally fine. It's a little easier to go through the iNaturalist questions when you're in the app instead of flipping back and forth.
Right. So, well, I'm not sure that Tom has asked, he wants to hear a little about the topic from the title, how to rediscover a lost species using iNaturalist.
Yes. So I was actually, if you're okay, holding that thought in mind for a couple more slides once I get back into my presentation, Tom. I was going to talk a little bit about how we've done that with the Lady Beetle Atlas. So I will get there.
I don't think there are other specific like using the program questions in the chat. Would you mind maybe showing one of our conservation areas as like an example?
Definitely.
If you search for in the app, like Mountain View Farm Conservation Area, the project should come up, I think. There it is.
Yeah, definitely.
And to add an observation to this, you would just click add observations at the top. That's right?
Yeah, so it looks like this is a collection project. So you don't even need to go through the step of adding observations as long as you are within the boundary of this project, they will get automatically pulled into the project.
Great.
So that is not even, that's one of the nice things about collection projects is there's no need for users to take the extra step of actively uploading to the project. They just get pulled in as long as you're within the project boundaries. But yes, this again is a very nice view of all of the observations that have been made at Mountain View Farm.
Mm-hmm. I have one question from Barbara about the app. It sounds like she says, I have Seek on my phone. How do I use that with iNaturalist?
Yes, so within Seek, there is an option to upload the photos that you have taken in Seek to iNaturalist. That just requires you to create an iNaturalist account if you don't already have one. And if you do have one, within the settings in Seek, you can link your iNaturalist account to your Seek, which will then give you the option of just exporting your like Seek observations into iNaturalist.
So do I need to have an iNaturalist account on my computer and a Seek account on my phone?
So you could just have iNaturalist on your phone as well. It doesn't really matter where you make the account. I'm going to talk about the iNaturalist mobile app very briefly once I'm just going to go over uploading observations super quickly. But basically, you can have your iNaturalist account anywhere. I'm just really plugging the browser version because you have a lot more options than you do in the mobile app version. And in my opinion, the browser option of iNaturalist is much easier and more intuitive to use than the mobile app.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'm going to quickly go over upload and then try and get through a couple other things, being mindful of time and leaving some time for more questions. So I just very quickly clicked upload, which is always going to be near your user icon in the top right-hand corner of iNaturalist. And then what you can do is either import from another site or CSV, or you can do the easiest option, which is just choose files from your computer. You will then navigate to the correct folder, and to upload these photos and turn them into observations, simply click once on the first photo you want to upload, hold Shift down on your keyboard and click the last photo you want to upload, and then click open. All of the photos that you have uploaded to iNaturalist are going to populate on the page. They just take a little bit of time to load sometimes. And like I was saying earlier, you want one observation per individual. And so for example, all of these first photos are of the same lady beetle. So I don't want an individual observation for each because it's all the same lady beetle at the same time. So what you can do is again, hold Shift down on your keyboard and then single click on each of these, I call these plates, that you want to include in one observation. And then you just click combine at the top. And now you can see all of those photos are in one place or one observation, which is really convenient. So you can go through and do that to kind of clean up, you know, like all of these are the same lady beetle. So I'd put all those together, etc. However, iNaturalist also has a nice feature called Select All. So I actually saw all of these lady beetles at the same location on the same day. So selecting all allows you to edit all of these observations at the same time. So for example, I can select the correct date for all of them. So I don't have to go back through and individually add the date for each observation. And I can select the location for all of them. So you have the option to search the map up here for your location, or you can type in latitude and longitude, or use these plus and minus keys to zoom to the correct place on the map, and then you'll just click update observation, Also, one more thing to note is that you can expand the uncertainty area of where you saw these organisms. So this point represents exactly where I saw them, and then the red surrounding it is where they were maybe seen. So you don't need to have an exact pinpoint on the map for each observation. And then here is the ability to obscure my privacy if I wanted to. You can add these to any project you want. The ones that you have joined will populate here. You can also add observation fields if you want, such as lady beetle habitat. I would type in beech trees. And once you are done editing all of these, another important thing of note is that instead of selecting them all, say I saw these first couple at the same location, you can do the same shift and single click, and then just edit those 3 observations at the same time. But once you're done, I'd also want to put in the species name of twice-stabbed lady beetle, which you can see the artificial intelligence and iNaturalist did a good job with this one. And once you're done, you simply click submit and they pop into iNaturalist. Okay. So I'm only, again, being mindful of time, going to talk about the mobile app super briefly. Basically, there is the Explore tab, which has the same map and then also seeing the species as a grid view as the browser version does. You also have your content and news. You have the Me tab down here to see all of your observations. And then you have the upload feature, which is pretty similar to that in the browser version. It just takes a lot longer. So you just click observe. You can add photos either by directly taking the photo. It only allows you to take 1 photo at a time. So for very swift species like lady beetles, I recommend just taking a bunch of photos and then uploading from your camera roll. You then can, once you've selected your photos, you can click this to add the species identification that you want. In this case, I would add squirrel because those are squirrel tracks. You can edit any of the information down here that you want for date or location, and also geoprivacy again, and then you just click save. And that will then upload your observations to iNaturalist. So a couple of things that I just wanted to talk about super quickly are considering the best ways to make sure that your observations are identifiable by other users. So you really want to try and take as clear of photos as possible. In this case, you can see these are a little bit blurry because the lady beetle was really on the move in the little vial I had it in. But you can see that I have photos of all different angles of the 20 spotted lady beetle. So I have the underside, I have one that shows the side of the beetle and the front of the beetle, which helps other users see all of the markings across this individual to best help with identification. And then again, you just want to make sure that your time, date, and location are as accurate as possible to help others help you with your identification. I already talked about most of this, but another thing that you can do in iNaturalist is directly message other users. You can send them either something that's similar to an email in iNaturalist or comment at them in your observations, and they will get a notification and then we'll be able to respond to you. And then this is where I wanted to talk a little bit more about the power of iNaturalist in finding lost species. So you can see here the difference between research grade lady beetle observations between Vermont and New Hampshire, and also the difference in the number of species that have been found and the number of observers that have been uploading lady beetle observations. So basically, my point here is that the Vermont Atlas of Life team has created a project for lady beetles in iNaturalist and has been doing a lot of outreach to encourage people to look for them. And through doing this, we have rediscovered 4 lady beetle species in the state of Vermont that were lost for over 40 years. In total, we have 35 native lady beetle species recorded in the state of Vermont. So 4 of the missing ones, there were 13 missing ones, have been, there were 17 missing ones. We are now down to 12 missing lady beetle species were rediscovered, and then 3 new species were added to Vermont's lady beetle fauna data because they had never been previously recorded in the state before, and community naturalists engaging with our Vermont Lady Beetle Atlas found them and uploaded observations of them. So to end, I am just going to talk about, Allison very nicely opened this, but iNaturalist is a really great way to learn about the species surrounding you, and also, again, to contribute to research simply by uploading observations. So when you're visiting Upper Valley Land Trust sites, both in Vermont and in New Hampshire, you can contribute to their iNaturalist projects simply by downloading iNaturalist, taking a bunch of photos while you're there, and then uploading those photos to iNaturalist. And I had a couple more slides, but I will leave it here so I have time for questions. And then, yeah.
All right, thank you, Julia. We do have some questions in the chat for you. From Andrew, specifically about the lady beetles. How do you know if the beetle is a man or a lady?
Yes, so it very much depends on the species. Some of the lady beetles have very distinctive markings. So the segments of the lady beetle, you have the head. Actually, I can bop back a couple slides to the 20-spotted lady beetle. You have the head, the pronotum, which is that middle section, and the electra. The males will have different markings specifically on the pronotum than the females do. Others look identical, and you need either a microscope, because some lady beetles are only like 1 millimeter in length. They're very, very small. So either a microscope or a really nice hand lens to see differences in their reproductive organs. And apparently they look distinctive. I have not studied lady beetles enough to actually be able to tell the difference between male and female by looking at their reproductive parts, but that is how you can actually distinguish them.
Great. Linda's question, will you learn if your observation is invasive or harmful in some way?
Yes, you will. So in iNaturalist, invasive or non-native species get a little flag in the top right-hand corner of their, both for the observation page itself and also for the species page. It'll have a little red IN, so you know that that species is invasive. Also, it's important to note that not every single non-native species in iNaturalist is flagged yet. So that's something, if you're in there and you're like, oh, this is an invasive species, why isn't this flagged? You can just use the iNaturalist forum or a kind of direct message format to contact the iNaturalist curators, and they can fix that.
Anyone else have any questions they'd either like to put in the chat, or since there are not that many of us, unmute yourself and ask? Anybody? All right. Well, if there are no further questions, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Julia, for this presentation. And I hope everyone learned a little something about iNaturalist today.
Thank you. Now I can spend the afternoon exploring iNaturalist.
Awesome.
Yeah, and again, I will send Allison an email with some iNaturalist use resources that VCE has after this that she can share with you all. And definitely I'll include my email in that. Definitely feel free to reach out to me whether you're in Vermont or somewhere else, if you have iNaturalist questions, because this is like pretty much what my service is helping people with this type of thing.
Yeah, and I'll forward that information to all of the participants today. All right, so with that, I'm gonna end our Zoom call, but thank you all for coming.
Thank you.